Hi guys, I'm Leanne. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Alan Grace Custom Creations. Today on our very first YouTube tutorial, we're going to be making the How You Doing Bowler by Sincerely Jen's patterns with a few modifications. We're going to change the lining to a fully bound lining, so there's no need for a drop-in. And we're going to be creating our own bottom gusset panel piece to make it go a little smoother. I'm going to link the pattern in the description below, as well as where you can find all the super awesome stuff that I used in this video. I hope you like it.
Talk about the pattern pieces we're going to use for this modification. So after you print out all your pattern pieces, I like to double print them out so that I can put them together so I don't have to worry about cutting on the fold. I have an entire piece. For this modification only, for a full gusset binding, we are going to be using the exterior zipper panel. And you're going to be cutting 4 of those, 2 in your exterior and 2 of your interior. We want the same size panel piece to create the gusset. In addition to that, I'm using the fabric overlay corner that is on the front of the bag, or the corners of the bag, but I'm using vinyl. And I do this because the way I cut my gusset piece, I find that it hits the seam better with my gusset if I use the fabric overlay, because it's a slightly larger piece versus the vinyl piece. So I'm using the fabric overlay size in my video. We also need the origami stars. You're going to need this special full bottom gusset, and I'm going to show you guys how I created this after I talk about my fabrics. This is a combination of a bottom piece and the side gusset piece panel that she has. I just kind of melted them together to create one big piece so that I wouldn't have to worry about the extra seams hitting the corners of my bags and creating too much bulk. You can absolutely do this with her smaller gusset piece, which is this, and the bottom. You would just have to make a rectangle out of your bottom piece in order to attach it, because the pattern piece is rounded on her printout. We're also going to be needing the main panel piece. The only other modification we need to make is we need to round the corner on our main panel. And what I did is I literally just did a small little notch right in the corner so that way the gusset can go all the way around in a circular motion or a circular fashion. And then we'll fold it down at the dotted lines like she instructs for the slip pocket on the inside. You are also going to need her list of added things to cut, such as handle connectors and handles, and as well as binding for this bag. Okay, let's start with our pattern pieces. I'm going to start with my lining, and what I have cut is 2 main panels in waterproof canvas. You can also use quilt cotton interfaced or water resistant canvas, whatever you prefer. I am doing waterproof canvas just because it eliminates the need for extra interfacing, and the binding is so much easier with waterproof canvas binding. So 2 main panels cut. I also have 1 piece of my lining slip pocket in waterproof canvas, and then the other is going to be in this print. This is an uninterfaced piece of cotton woven. I just find that it works better in the seams to have less bulk. If it's uninterfaced, you can totally interface it if you want to. But I think the waterproof canvas gives it a nice little stability that I don't need it. You can also do 2 pieces of Bowman. I would interface at least 1 if I did it that way, or you can use 2 waterproof pieces of canvas. I just wanted to have a little print on the inside of my slip pocket. So 2 pieces of the lining slip pocket, and that pattern piece in the paper is the main panel folded at the dashed line. And then I have 1 of the solid gusset bottoms that I make myself, and I will show you guys how we did that after this. I have 2 zipper panel in my lining.
I did not use the zipper panel lining pattern piece. Instead, what I did was I used the exterior zipper panel pattern piece because we want them to be the same size inside and out. Because it's a binded lining, we don't need the extra width that the lining piece was giving us for the drop-in. So this is 2 waterproof canvas zipper lining using the exterior zipper pattern piece. And then 2 pieces for my zipper pocket. What I ended up doing was cut the full piece that it said to in the pattern, and then I just sliced it in half because I wanted my print to be face up in both directions. But you can do it the way Jenny has it with one solid piece, or you can do it this way. Onto the exterior of the bag. I'm choosing to do woven print for the main panel. So I have 2 main panels cut out, interfaced with, you need to interface it with like a woven interfacing. I use Geeky Fuse from Wizardry Stitchery in Cotton Soft. I absolutely love it. And then also what I end up doing with this one is I do a piece of foam. A lot of people don't enjoy foam, or, you know, they would rather use Duckaville Heavy or Light or Fleece. I find that with this one so far, the extra foam on this piece gives it a nice solid base and it looks amazing. So what I do is I do foam with the 1/2 inch seam allowance cut off, fused on to the bag. And in Jenny's original pattern, she actually uses foam for the entire bag, and hers actually goes all the way to the line. You don't have to do that here if you don't want to. You could do it if you know that your machine will handle it. I just like to avoid the bulk. So I have 2 main in my print. And then for the rest of my exterior, I'm coordinating with vinyl from Emmeline Bags. This is my favorite. Oh, I love it. So we need 4 of the accent corner pieces. I actually use the fabric overlay piece. She gives you plenty of options if you're going to do a full fabric exterior or not. I find that with the seam allowance that I give my gusset, the fabric overlay ones line up better than the vinyl overlay ones. You can totally edge coat the curves if you would like. It's not necessary. I've done it on a couple, but again, not necessary. And then what I like to do, I didn't do it on these yet, but I like to mark the bottom compared to the piece so I know which way. I think it's actually the long way goes on the bottom. I'll double check before we start, but I'm pretty sure the long way goes on the bottom and then that shorter edge goes up the side. So you need 2 sets of those, and they're mirrored, so you can put them on both sides. We have 4 of the vinyl connector overlays, these amazing little origami stars that create the cutest little cover. I have 4 of my connector rectangle handles. I have 2 of the exterior zipper panels, and I'm trying something new with this one, so we'll see how it goes. But I did Duckaville Light on my zipper panels. So far I have tried foam and fleece. I was not a fan of the foam, so I will not be doing that one again. I actually really like the fleece. The fleece on these pieces give it enough of a enough body, I guess you could say, to match up with the foam on the front panels. But we're going to try with Duckaville Light and see if I like it or not, because it's definitely easier to work with. And then I have 1 of my solid gusset bottom panels. And on the back side, I put a piece of Duckaville Light on this one. And it is, let me double check. I think it's 4x10. Yeah, so it's a 4x10 rectangle. What I did is I marked the centers, slid it down, went 5 this way, 5 this way, and then 4 inches wide. This keeps it out of the seam allowance, and this keeps it from going too high up the sides that it's inside of your corners. And then I also have my strap just a solid piece for now. We'll cut it down here in a minute. I go a little longer, so it's like a shoulder strap versus a handle. I cut mine to 27 inches, just a personal preference. And it is also a 3/4 inch handle. So that is everything for our bag parts. Other things that you will need: zipper tape. At least, I go a couple inches over on my zipper panel, so I don't have to put my zippers on until after it's on my panels. So probably 22 inches-ish for that. And then you need another like 9 or 10 inch zipper. I use zipper by the yard and cut it as I need it. You're also going to need 4 D-rings in 3/4 inches. You could probably modify this bag to do 1 inch straps, but I didn't want to play with that. And I honestly really like the way the 3/4 inch straps look. You will also need, I'm doing a double zipper for my exterior. You need a zipper pull for your interior. And then these are totally optional, but I'm going to put a bag plate on the front and also strap ends for my straps. That is all of the hardware pattern pieces that you will need to make this bag. Other things to use that aren't necessarily needed but are great to use: rivets for the connectors. I like to put them on there every once in a while. I haven't decided if I'm going to do that for this bag or not, but I probably will. You're going to need your rotary cutter, your ruler, a pen, and then I use double-sided tape when it comes to putting my gussets on, and actually it's very helpful when we do the little origami stars, because the way you have to fold them in, you need them to stick to something. So very helpful for this. Otherwise, that is everything you're going to need to make this bag. So the first modification I made to my How You Doin Bowler was creating a solid bottom gusset piece. In the pattern, Jenny has it written as a drop-in liner, so you don't have to worry about too much bulk in the corners when it comes to the putting the final product together. But with binding it, you're essentially creating a huge sandwich with all these layers. And the way the pattern is written with all the pieces, it gets kind of bulky when you hit the corners on the regular bag. So to alleviate some of that stress, I created a bottom piece that was one solid piece, and there was no need for the extra side gusset panels and a separate bottom. So what I did was I started by taking 2 pieces of paper and taping them together, because they're a little bit longer than a regular standard size piece of paper. And I cut a rectangle that is 17.5 by 5.5. And then what we end up doing is taking our side gusset panel, and I like to print this twice and tape them together so I don't have to worry about on the fold. So you take this little piece right here and you line it up so that the top is at the top of your short side and the bottom is going to line up straight across, because it's just about as wide as this. And then you just take a pen or a pencil and you trace this little notch on both sides. Then we're going to turn it around and do it the same on the other side. And then you're just going to cut off your little extra wings on both sides. And what's left is a bottom piece that has the tapered short ends, and then your full center gusset. And that is how I created a full center bottom piece. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to prep some of our pieces. This just makes it easier when we get to the sewing machine that everything is marked. I have marked the center on my zipper panels. I have marked the centers on my main gusset piece, bottom piece. I've also marked the centers in my main panels. We need these landmarks to be able to line our gussets up properly. I've also taken all of my connectors, put the halfway mark down, put some double-sided tape down. You do not need double-sided tape for this part. If you have clips, like, it's not a big deal. I just find it easier. I've also added tape to my stars, just so that they're ready to go when we fold them in. And then the next step we're going to do is prep our main panel. So I have printed the pattern piece twice. One's mirrored and you don't have to mirror it. It's just that's the way my printer's set up normally. So I will flip this around. Just so I had a whole piece. And what I did is I cut out one side. You could easily cut out two to make it easier. I just cut out the one side. And what I like to do is line it up on my piece. And we are going to mark 3/4 inch down from the top of our connector. And I've already done this on most of my pieces. And you're literally going to find the center and mark a 3/4 inch line in the center of the thing, of the placement. This is where, when we go to sew, we've got our little connector piece. This is where you will tack it down so that you can take your overlay and put it on top. I do not trace the overlay shape onto my bag only because I don't want to worry about the ink being seen. If you use heat erasable pens, it's really hard to get the heat in there next to the vinyl, and sometimes those like to come back anyway over time. So I just mark the single line, and you're going to repeat this step 4 times. So you're going to do it here. You're going to flip this piece over, do it here, and then on your other piece, you'll do the same. So all of those landmarks are there when you go to do your connectors. Normally I would start with my strap, but since I haven't cut that down yet, I'm going to go ahead and start with my connector pieces. So we're going to take the tape off the edges that we folded in. Again, you don't need to use tape for this part. I just find it easier than having to do a bunch of clips on these little pieces. But yeah. So we're going to go ahead, and I do mine backwards just because, I don't know, I've always just done it backwards. So we're just going to sew down 1/8 of an inch from the sides. I like to line mine up and just go in a continuous. Alternatively, you could make one long strip with whatever size this ends up being, and then cut it down into the sizes you need. But I already cut them, so it is what it is. I'm just doing a little back stitch at the end. At this point, I think it's just habit. Not necessary, just habit. So yeah. So then I just snip it off, snip it off, snip it off, and then I cut my tails off. And then we repeat for the second side. So you'll end up having your piece that is 3/4 inch wide for your 3/4 inch hardware. Sometimes this tape doesn't want to come off for me. This is 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape. I also use 1/4 of an inch in some spots, but for the most part, I use 1/8 of an inch in this bag. Okay. So then we just repeat onto the other side. I also find it's very helpful to have 2 full bobbins for this bag. Just because by the time you get to the binding, I do a lot of basting onto things, so there's always extra thread. So there we have our 4 connector pieces. Gonna go ahead and pull one of my main panels, and I'm gonna go ahead and do my accent pieces. For this, I do it a little differently. So obviously this is still square because that's the original panel, and my corners are now rounded. So what I end up doing is I line up the longer side on the bottom and the shorter side on the side, and I just kind of clip it on just for a second. And then what I do is I will do the top stitch. This is the one you want nice and fancy. I've got my stitch length set to 4.5, and we're just gonna sew this on right on that edge, nice and pretty. It is a corner, sometimes it helps to go slow. And then once I have that on, I do the one on that. I snip off my extra threads. And then what I do is I flip it over from the back side. I increase my stitch length just, I don't know, probably like to a 5.5 to a 6. And I will baste around the outer edge, around the corner, just to get that vinyl piece on there. So I get the nice little corner on there, and I didn't have to like worry about, am I hitting the fabric? Am I going off the fabric? Stuff like that. So I know it's a little bit of a process doing the 2 extra stitch lines versus just having to go all the way around one time. But I find it works better because then you can literally just flip it over and trim the vinyl. I got a little carried away on this side. That's overhanging. But there you have your corner. So I'm going to do this on all 4 corners. Remember, if you are changing your stitch length, to put it back down to where it was. Ask me how I know. There have been plenty of times in this pattern where I've upped my stitch length and then gone to top stitch something and it was way too big. Check your stitch length. Okay, so we're gonna, if my string will cooperate, we're gonna do this again. So this panel has both of the accent pieces on it. So we're going to do the next one, and then we'll work on the connectors.
And just like that, I forgot to check my stitch length. See, guys, this is why. It won't be so bad. I'll just pop the seams out really quick and then try to cover it up. So what I like to do, if I do this on vinyl, which sucks a lot, we all know this because you perforate your vinyl and it doesn't quite look the same. What I like to do is I will take my seam ripper and I'll take my string out and I will put my stitches back in, redo it, and then if I look at my vinyl and I notice that the holes that I made from the wrong stitch length are super noticeable or predominant, I'll heat up my iron for a little bit. And from the back side, I will just kind of give it a nice little press and a little bit of a steam. Just to warm up the vinyl and get rid of those holes. That has been the best thing that I've come up with. Obviously, we don't like to put extra holes in our vinyl and our leather because it just makes it a little weaker every time. But it happens. Especially when you're in like the groove of things and you're not paying attention. Okay, so. Now we have both of our main panels with their accents. Next, I'm going to grab my connectors and my hardware. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a connector with my hardware, place it through, fold it in half. If you want to put a little bit of tape to keep these together, you can. I find that I don't have to and I can just hold it. And what I do is I line it up. And because I made my line exactly 3/4 of an inch, it literally just goes from edge to edge. I slide it under my machine and I baste it on. Just like that. And then I'll do the same for the other side. Just like so. Snip my threads. I literally just make a huge jump stitch when I put these on and I just cut it off. So we have our connectors on there holding our rectangle rings, and then we're going to do the same thing for the second panel. Make sure our threads are in the right direction. I got a little wonky, but it's all right. Okay, and so now we have our connectors on our front panels. Now we're gonna do the little origami stars. I like to call them origami stars because the way they fold into each other and they work. So what we're gonna do, I'm going to change the tape on this one. I had an idea putting tape on this one and then I was like, that was just way too much work. I'm not even gonna bother with it. Okay, so in the pattern, Jenny has these super awesome, every time I look at it, I think of Patrick Star from SpongeBob SquarePants.
These little special stars. And what we do with these, in the instructions, she says to start with the bottom 2 pieces, but I prefer to start with the top corner. So you'll have one big one at the top, 2 big ones on the sides, and then 2 little babies at the bottom. And what I like to do is remove my tape. And I like to start at the top. And I like to fold it as flat as possible down, straight down, just like that. And then I work on the sides and I just kind of get it to a point as best as I can. And then I do the other side. Same thing. And then I do the little bottom pieces. And you're essentially just like, they're not like, sometimes see like mine's overlapping right there. Sometimes mine overlaps a little bit, which is fine because in the end you're going to have this cute little badge that's going to cover our connector pieces. I do like to add a piece of tape on the back of these just to stick them on my connectors. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for all 4 of these. Ooh, that one was almost perfect. So now that we have our 4 little, they look like little badges. Obviously, you know, because we're folding these by hand, they're not going to be the perfect shape on all of them. But once they're on your bag, you really don't even notice. I think they're fantastic. So next what we're going to do, and you can reference the pattern. I'm not sure if she actually puts a measurement for these. I literally eyeball it every time and it seems to work out just fine. Knock on wood. So far, so good. I'm also going to grab, okay, so we have our connectors here. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your little badge and you're just going to kind of, I like to leave about that much of my connector sticking out of the top, roughly. I'm not sure what, let's see. Let's see if I can find my seam guide that will show us. No, I'll just get a ruler. I leave about almost a 1/2 inch of the connector showing. Just a personal preference. It works out well when you're sewing around it. So this is probably the most stressful part for me because sometimes one of these corners likes to give me a headache. So what I like to do is start at the bottom. I'm going to put my needle right in the point of the bottom, and I'm going to sew. I'm going to eye back stitch. A lot of people don't do that on a top stitch that's like this. I prefer to back stitch because I get paranoid that my threads, if I pull them through and tie them, will come undone. So I do a little back stitch and I try to keep it as neat as possible. And I just slowly work my way around this star or this badge because it's going to get a little tricky towards the top, but if you take your time and go slow, this is the corner that always gets me. Sometimes it likes to come down and skip a stitch. I keep a piece of scrap vinyl, or I cut one off as I'm doing projects to keep it in my machine so I can cover my hardware so that I don't scuff it. And then I just double check where I'm at. Ooh, and yay! Success. So just kind of go nice and slow, get back to that corner, and I do one extra top or one extra back stitch. And then I cut my threads as close as possible. And then you have your little badge. I probably should have gone up just a hair right there, but it's fine. It's great. So we have our little badge. And now we're going to go around and do that 3 more times. Hold your breath while you do it so you don't, you know, get scared.
And there we have our connectors. So now this is the point where you can either add rivets to these if you wanted to, just to give it a little extra something. You don't have to. I probably will, so I might do that. It also is a good time to add a bag tag or a metal nameplate if you have one. I generally try to go, let's see. So from my center, I probably go up, and this is just personal preference. I probably go up 3.5 inches on the center and put like my label, or if I have a special tag or a plate to put on these. But then once you do that, your fronts are done and you can set them off to the side. Okay, the next thing we're going to work on is our zipper panel pieces. So you're going to need your 2 exterior zipper panels and your 2 interior zipper panels. Again, we used the same pattern piece for both of these pieces, or both sets of these pieces, so that they were the same exact size. What I'm going to do, and this is just, I've marked all my centers, just so that they line up a little easier when I go to do this. I'm going to put double-sided tape on this and just put it right along the straight edge. The zipper is going to go along the straight edge of our panels. You can most definitely use clips for this. I just find it more convenient because it means that they don't shift on me when I'm removing it or anything. So exterior zipper panel right side up. Zipper tape is going to go right side down. And I did mark my centers on my zipper just to, again, line it up better on both sides. And I'm just going to attach my zipper. Now, if you're using clips and you want to make sure that this doesn't shift when you make a sandwich, you could totally base this on at 1/8 of an inch before you add your lining piece. But because I'm using tape, I don't have to worry about it. So I am just taping this. And by using the 1/8 inch or the 1/8 of an inch tape versus the 1/4 of an inch, I'm keeping the tape out of my my seam allowance for now. I know a lot of people, they get a little bit gunky on their needles when we're using so much tape. I find it's helpful to keep like a little alcohol wipe, or even part of a little Clorox wipe next to my sewing machine so that I can wipe off my needle every once in a while. So we're going to make our zipper sandwich. Make sure that the coils are touching your exterior. Ask me how I know. Wasn't paying attention the other day and I did it backwards, and I had to see, I did it all the way through, guys, all the way through, and I had to seam rip it. If you have a zipper foot, you can do this at 3/8 of an inch. I have a narrow foot, so I literally just try to get as close to the teeth as I possibly can. It ends up being right between 1/4 of an inch and 3/8 of an inch. I like to use, I have these magnetic seam guides. I also have it marked on my plate of my machine, the measurements. But to keep a consistent straight line and not me just, you know, being wonky, I like to put this down after I line up where my needle's gonna go, and I keep it straight so that I can just breeze through it. So we're gonna go ahead and do this. Because I don't have any clips or anything, nothing's getting in the way. And I literally am just going straight against my magnet so it stays put. So I'm keeping a very consistent straight line. Okay, after we've attached our zippers together, this is where I get my clips out, because now we have to press open our zipper panel. So, and because I'm using Decaville Light and vinyl, you really can't heat press it or use your iron. So I'm just kind of pushing it as best as I can. I'll take the back piece and I will literally pull it, line up this, and I'll throw a clip on there. I'll go to the other side and do the same thing. Just line it up. And just to keep an idea of my zipper panel staying together, I just kind of throw a few extra clips down the back side, just so I know that they're staying together as I top stitch. So far I'm not hating the Decaville right there, but we'll see what it looks like in the end. Like I said, right now the fleece is wetting for me. So I got that all, it looks wonky now, but trust the process. So next we're going to top stitch down our zipper panel. I start at the top and I pull. Like I feel like I am pulling for ages, but I pull nice and tight so that it keeps it nice and tight in the lining. And I just do my top stitch. And as I go, I just readjust and just give it a pull, and I hold it and I stop and I pull again. Keep going down the line, all while I'm trying to make sure that my lining piece stays with my exterior, because I want it to line up as close as possible when I go to turn this. It just makes it easier. Once I get to the edge, I turn my piece and I go down the short side. Now I'm essentially attaching the exterior to my lining, and I will go ahead and bump up my stitch length when I hit the back side, and I will just work my way at about 1/8 of an inch. Till I'm back around to where I started. So if you pulled tight enough, your piece should line up pretty well. And like I'm not even mad. Like there was one little piece that kind of shifted, but it's okay. It's perfect, because when we assemble this, we're going to be past this stitch line anyway, and it will all encase itself. This just makes it so you don't have a bunch of floppy pieces around, and just it's one solid piece. So now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing to the other side of our zipper panel. I'm going to put tape down, line it up, stitch it down, and then top stitch and baste my lining to my exterior. And the reason why I make my zipper a little longer on each side is so that I don't have to worry about trying to get a zipper on
a really tight edge against my panel. With these extra little flappies, it makes it easier to get the zippers on. And because I do a double zipper on this, you don't have to, but I think it looks better with this bag in particular. I have extra overhang on both sides because you have a zipper on both sides, coming in from both sides. I will mention that if you did Decaville Light or an interfacing on your pieces and you want to keep it out as the seam allowance as much as possible, I left it in the seam allowance on the zipper side only, but I cut it off the front and the sides. So what I did was I traced the pattern piece onto my Decaville Light and I removed a 1/2 inch on both of the short ends and then a 1/2 inch from the straight edge inch only, and then just lined up my straight edge completely to the top.
And there you have the main zipper panel. If you haven't made landmarks in your centers, now is the perfect time to do so. You're going to want to do that in order to line up your gusset to your main panels appropriately. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my zipper pulls. So I've got one coming in on this side. And then I've got one coming in on this side. This is where it's nice to have those little extra tails. So then we have our double zippers. I love these pop tabs. These are probably my favorite zippers to use on everything. You can go ahead and trim down your zipper at this point. I had a little bit of an overhang of my lining, so I'm going to go ahead and trim that off too. If you're trimming your zippers, make sure that you burn them off. Just singe them. Try not to do it too much because the vinyl's right there, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, next we're going to take our 2 solid gusset bottoms. Now, I made these specifically for my bag pattern, or it's not my pattern, guys. It's Jenny from Sincerely Jen. She's super awesome. I just can't do those drop-ins to save my life. I love to bind a bag. It's just me. So, with the pieces that we made, we are going to go ahead and make a sandwich. We're going to make a full gusset. So we're going to line our short ends up together. And I'm very happy with this. It's almost exactly the right width. We're going to make a sandwich. So we've got our exterior with our exterior and our lining with our lining. And I'm going to sew this on at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. This is different from her pattern. Most of her pieces are, I think the seam allowance are 1/2 inch. But because I made this specific for this size, it is a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to sew through all those layers. Make sure you're setting your stitch length appropriately. Okay. And now we're going to flip these out. And we're going to top stitch across this. So through your lining and your exterior, you're just going to pull it and you're going to give it a good top stitch. So there's our top stitch. And now we're going to take our other end and we're going to create a sandwich on the other side. This is going to cause your pattern to kind of buckle. Kind of do this, but it's fine. You can squish it down and it will work. If I can get it out of my way. So again, we're making a sandwich. And we're going to bring this, so we're enclosing the whole thing. Because we want one continuous loop to make our gusset. So this is what you're going to look like once you have it all sandwiched together. And you're going to do the same thing on this side. You're going to do a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to use my seam guide so that I can keep it nice and straight. This is probably the trickiest part for top stitching. It's not awful, but you kind of have to work around your pattern piece at this point. So you're just going to kind of get it to where you need it to be and just shift it over. Now, if you have a cylinder arm, this is obviously a walk in the park. But you don't have to have a cylinder arm. And I'm just now realizing, I think I'm a half a turn on my top stitch length compared to my zipper. That's all right. It's fine. It still looks nice. Okay, so once you have your gusset all together, nice big loop, we want to baste these two pieces together, much like the zipper panel, so we don't have two flapping pieces. I find it's easier to do it from the exterior side because my vinyl stretches and wait, which way do I do it? Hold on. Yeah, I do it from the exterior. I'm like, what I do is I start at my top and I just base the edge down, so I'm attaching my exterior to my lining. So crank your stitch length up. This will save you in the long run, trust me. You want these pieces to be attached. So I just kind of line it up, pull it, adjust it as I need to go. We're doing this right at the edge, so about 1/8 of an inch. Then we do the other side. Sometimes this can get tricky when you have vinyl that stretches a little bit, because you don't want to have like any weird puckers or anything, but sometimes it gets stretched. So I just kind of squish it out as best I can, because obviously your waterproof canvas is not going to stretch. So, but we want to try to make this as tight as possible, so you don't have any weird bubbles. Turn it right side out, and there we have our gusset. So this is completely finished, and you can set it off to the side. Alternately, if you want to use Jenny's original pieces, it is totally doable. But like I said, the way hers is built is that there is a small side panel that attaches to a bottom panel. And I found that the problem I was having is that where the bottom panel and the side gusset panel met, it literally hit in the very corner of my bags, and it caused a lot of extra bulk for the binding, and it didn't like sit as nice and flat on the corner as I liked. It is totally doable. If you are doing that, it's almost the same process as we just did this. You would take your smaller piece, put it up first. I think it's labeled side gusset panel in the pattern. So you would do those first as sandwiches on the end to give you your longer piece. I also would baste around to make it one piece in the end. I did find that changing the seam allowance on that though, if you did 3/8 of an inch on both sides, it fit better on your main panel. And then once you have your side gusset panel piece, you would take that bottom piece, the rectangle, and attach it the same way we did this. If you're using those pieces as well though, you'll have to change the bottom piece to a rectangle. And I don't remember what the measurement is on that, but essentially you can take the main panel piece because it's rounded and just measure how long it is and how wide it is and just make it a full rectangle. I hope that makes sense. Again, I'm not doing that for this one. We're using the piece that we made. So this is complete. You can set it off to the side. And now we're going to work on our lining. Okay, the next step we're going to do is we're going to start working on our lining pieces. I'm going to do my lining slip pocket first. Now there's two ways I like to do this. I've done it both. The first way is the simplest way. Take your fabrics, put them right side together. So at a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch, totally your option. I'm not sure. I don't remember what Jenny said in the pattern, but again, personal preference. I do 1/2 inch just because it leaves enough of it leaves a deep enough slip pocket. You could also, if you're using waterproof canvas, I've done this a couple of times too. I will mark a 1/2 inch from the top. I will take my piece and I will line that up, and then I will go ahead and just fold this in on itself a couple of times and create a like a trim piece out of the waterproof canvas. It does shorten up your pocket significantly if you do that, so keep that in mind. You could also, when you go to cut your pieces, add some extra length to it if you want to do it that way. Alternately, in a lot of slip pocket patterns, you could simply base this all together and put a trim piece on the top if you want to. I am going to go ahead and do it the easy way on this one, and I'm just going to sandwich my pieces together. Sew them at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Woo. Take those off, and then I'm going to just flip it. Sometimes I will give it a little bit of an edge, but I'm not going to do that today. Just flip it, finger press it. You could easily hit this with the iron, which I might do because I always find uninterfaced woven to like super delicate. So we're just gonna hold on our seam allowances. Okay, so we'll have that down, and you're going to go ahead and top stitch across the top just to make it a nice finished look. Check your stitch length because, you know, So we have our slip pocket, top stitched, ready to go. You're going to take one of your lining main panel pieces. I forgot to mark the centers on these, so I'm going to go ahead and do that really quick. Okay. And then I'm literally just going to line up my pieces. I'm going to go ahead and clip the sides to just hold the sides down for now. Now, don't do what I'm about to do. The proper way to do this is to take your ruler, find the center, mark the center, sew your line. I eyeball it. Don't do what I do. Get a ruler. I find that because I don't have this interfaced, it is kind of shifty. So what I like to do is I like to do my center line first before I baste around the outside. But again, don't do what I'm doing. Get a ruler. We're just gonna go down the center. I like to create this little triangle at the top of mine. Thank you, Shannon, from Knotted Threads for teaching me how to do it. You could also do a rivet here if you wanted for some extra stability, but I just do a little triangle. So now that our center is sewn down, look, it's beautiful. I will go ahead and double check that everything's lining up. It looks like it is. Crank my seam allowance up, and I'm going to go ahead and baste around my slip pocket to attach it to the lining. Ooh. Trim any excess threads, flip it over, and if you have any extra pieces of fabric that are overhanging on your main panel, go ahead and just trim those down. Sometimes it gets a little wonky, but overall it's a good fit. All right, so here is our slip pocket. If you have a cute little tag you want to put up there, you can. I don't have anything cute, so I'm not gonna. So there is our slip pockets. Next, we are going to work on our zipper pockets. Sometimes this one is more stressful for me than anything else because I always feel like I can never get this straight. So I have my two pieces of pocket. I think that I actually cut these down a little bit smaller than in the original pattern because I place my pocket down a little further than what she does in the pattern. So I am doing 9 wide by 7 long, or however you want to say it. Short end, 7 this way, 9 this way. And I have 2 of those pieces. I'm going to take my super awesome zipper placement thingy from Mormino. It's perfect because it fits. And this is also why I like to do the sides, because it utilizes this and I get to use these more often. So we have our piece. And on the back side of one of our pocket panels, we're going to draw the box. If you don't have one of these super awesome things, it's 1 inch from the top, 1 inch from the sides. And then it is a 1/2 inch box, I want to say. Let's see. Yeah, a 1/2 inch box. And you're going to create a rectangle. Now in the pattern, she has us placing the top of our zipper. I believe it's 3/4 of an inch down from the top of our panel. However, I like it a little further down. It seemed a little, with the binding method, it made it a little higher than I would normally like. We are going to do 1.5 inches down. And I will get my ruler for this because I want to make sure that I'm actually in the right spot. You could totally eyeball it if you wanted to. I've seen lots of people do that. So we're going to go 1.5 inches down from the top center. And we're just going to, you can mark your center here to find it, but I find that as long as I have the same amount on both sides, roughly, we're good to go. So if you've done the zipper pocket, you know how this works. We're going to go around the box. Some people like to do the straight lines only because you avoid less pucker. Lately, I have not been successful at that, so I've been going around the box completely. So we're going to go around our box. We're placing our pocket right sides together, obviously. So we're going to go around our box and just try to get it on there as the best you can. Okay, pivot. Pivot again. I always try to count my stitches when I come down the sides so I know that I'm going the same space apart on each side. And if they fit together, that means that I kept it pretty straight. So now that we have our box on there, trim it off. I'm gonna grab my, I got my little cutter here. I'm going to measure in, I'm going to measure in a 1/2 inch from each side. Okay. I'm going to do it on this side too. Some people like to draw the line down the center. I just kind of hit the center as best I can. But we're going to go ahead and cut straight down the middle, line to line, or those 1/2 inch marks to that 1/2 inch mark. And you're just going to cut through both layers. Both layers. And then on our corners, we are going to get as close to that stitch as possible. I always feel like I never get close enough, but I feel like I'm going to cut into the stitch. So we're going to cut a triangle into both. This is what is going to cause those puckers. If you don't get close enough to these stitches, you're going to have a weird pucker. Sometimes I just roll with it. It is what it is. You're going to take this and you're going to shove it through to our other side. Obviously, working with waterproof canvas, you don't want to iron on the back of it or you'll melt it. You can iron on the front of it with some steam. I honestly like to just lay a piece of fabric over the top just to protect it a little bit. because I do find sometimes if I leave the iron on the front side too long, it will create this weird, like, smooth spot, and I don't like it. So I'm just kind of rolling my seams down to get it nice and flat. This top part is always the hardest because it's so small and you're trying to create the best rectangle possible because you don't want it super wonky. But if I roll it a little bit, get it kind of clipped in place for a second to just give it that shape, then we can manipulate it a little bit. And honestly, the puckers aren't too bad today. You can see a little bit like right there, just because that's where the stitch is. But it's not awful, and I'm not mad with it. Not mad at all. I am going to go ahead and give mine a little bit of a press just because I want to be able to take the clips off easily. So, yeah. All right, so I pressed my pocket. It's a little wavy just because of the steam, but it'll be fine. It'll fix itself. Now, there's many ways you can do these pockets. Like a lot of bag patterns have like ways you can do an overlay and you're sewing them on differently. This one is a simple, I think it's called a welting pocket. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like that's the word I've heard. But don't quote me on that. Anyway, so we have our super awesome panel. I have my zipper. It is longer. It's pretty much the length of my main panel. And here is why. I have learned that when you're putting a zipper on these and you're trying to sew it down, you always get a weird bubble. I did a pattern with the zipper done this way, and it was the Gaia. Forgive me if I'm saying that wrong, Shannon. I don't think I've ever heard it said out loud. The Gaia from Knotted Threads. She did her pockets like this, but she also had an overlay that was done differently, but the zipper installing part is the same method almost. So what I'm going to do is on the back side of this, and some people would use tape. I just hold it down and do it. I'm going to put it on the back side, and I'm going to leave a very large section over here. And here's why. I'm not going to put my zipper on until I've almost completely sewn in my box. It helps keep it straight, and you don't have to worry about the zipper being in the way. Now, if you're worried that your zipper is going to shift, you can most definitely put some tape and line it up. I'm not going to do that. So I get my zipper centered the best I can, and I'm going to start about an inch in on the bottom. So again, some people will pull the threads through the back and tie them off. I don't. I just do a back stitch and try to make it as neat as possible. I also try to keep this within like 1/8 of an inch of the opening. So we've got our back stitch to hold me in place. I'm going to line up my pocket and make sure it's all center, and I'm going to start. Okay, we've made it to the corner. We're going to pivot, go over our zipper. Okay. We're going to come back down. I went a little wider on the top. That's okay. It'll be fine. So as I'm coming around the top, I'm going to sew down, and I'm going to stop about where I started my other side. I'm going to stop right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed my zipper on. So make sure your needle is down. I have a synchronizer, so it pushes it down every time I take my foot off the pedal, so I don't have to worry about it. And I'm going to thread my zipper on here and just kind of push it through. And I'm going to maneuver it in the part that is not sewn down. I know you guys can't see this, but I added my zipper, pushed it all the way through. Now I'm going to put my foot back down and continue. I'm going to come back around to the spot I was at. Okay, snip my threads. Wow. And there we have our pocket. Not too shabby. Next, we're going to take the back piece and we're going to attach it just like this. And we're literally just going to sew all the way around it and enclose it, because we don't have to turn anything through it. We don't have to like worry about leaving an opening or anything like that. If you are using her single panel method, you're literally only going to have to sew a U shape because the bottom will already be connected. But because I have two separate pieces, I have to do it this way. So I'm just going to, and you can do this at whatever seam allowance you really want. I try to keep it like around 3/8, but it all depends. But yeah, we're just going to sew all the way around. And if your pocket panels don't line up completely fine, that's okay, because the way we turned it through the hole, you kind of create a little bit of tension and it's not fully square anymore. Yeah, see, it got a little wonky right there too. It's fine. Okay, and then across the top. Okay, we're going to release our pocket. We're going to trim any extra zipper down that we had. That one's okay. Make sure that you are melting your ends, or, you know, using furry check. I've never used furry check on a zipper, but melting the ends is fine. I also will trim off the bottom almost up to my stitch line, just to keep it a little bit higher out of the bottom, or out of the bottom of the bag. If you used her full zipper pocket piece and you placed it as far down as I did, you're gonna have it coming way too close to your bottom side of your main panel, and you run the risk of putting it inside your binding, and you don't want to do that. So there is my pocket. She is done. Now to complete the inside, we are going to grab both of our completed main pieces, the one with our slip pocket and the one with our zipper pocket. And we're also going to grab our main panel pieces. I like to put my slip pocket on the front of my bag and the zipper pocket on the back of my bag. Totally up to you how you want to do it. This is just my personal preference. I'm going to take, this is the front of my bag. I'm going to take my slip pocket. I'm going to line up the pieces in the centers. And I'm going to baste these together all the way around at about 1/8 of an inch. Like you just want to get them right on there. So we're going to do this twice. We're going to do it to the front and the back. And then we're going to do the same thing for the other panels. Find the centers, put them together, and baste around so that you are making one full piece with your lining and your exterior. If you've never done a bound bag before, and you're wondering, well, how are you gonna like hide these seams and whatnot? The binding will hide them. So there is no raw edges. Well, I take that back. The only raw edge that you will have on this bag is the waterproof canvas binding as well. So just gonna shift my pieces a little bit because I think sometimes when you sew the zipper pocket on, it kind of shrinks your panel piece just a little bit. So just throw some extra clips in there to make it stay put. It's not the end of the world if you don't catch your entire lining in there, but it helps. Okay, after you've sewn it all the way around, if there's any huge discrepancies on your lining versus your main panel, you can just kind of trim them down. I mean, it wasn't a huge discrepancy, but there's like 1/8 of an inch overhang. because you just want that main panel lining or that main panel exterior to be perfect. So there's our back piece with our zipper pocket on the inside. And here is our front piece with our slip pocket inside. Now we get to attach the gusset and create a bag. Okay, it is time to assemble our bag to our gusset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my front panel. We'll start one at a time. And we're going to take our gusset piece. We're going to flip our gusset piece right side out. Or I'm sorry, right side in. Yeah, so you'll see your lining, okay? We're going to take those center marking points that we made on our stuff. And we're going to clip those in place. Okay, there's my top. I'm going to flip it around and do my bottom. Now, because there is no center landmarks on this, this is why I have started to like using the fabric overlay pieces for my accents, because if I line up the top of my accent piece to my seam on my gusset, right where we top stitched, it is just about perfect. Just about a perfect landmark. So I'm going to go ahead and line those up, throw a few clips in them. I am not clipping the corners yet because I'm going to snip my gusset so that it lays nice and flat. So we're going to flip it over here. Again, line up as roughly right where our seam is. Now again, because I made this pattern piece myself and we had the round the corners from the original pattern, we are not going to get a completely 100% accurate rounded corner, but we are going to make it work the best we can. So what I like to do is double check that they're roughly the same on my corners of my bags. I'm going to go ahead and snip into my lining. About an eighth, a little bit more than an eighth of an inch, just so that it's within my seam allowance. And we're just going to make little cuts. And don't worry about cutting your basting stitches because you're going to tack it down anyway. So I've made my little cuts. And now I'm going to get this to my centers or my corners as best I can. Because it's not such an even round corner, because it kind of goes down flat and then it's just a little bit of a curve. It's not quite perfect. So we get them as close as we can. This is actually pretty dang good. Now this is optional, but staplers are your friend. This prevents it from shifting while you're sewing around the corner if you have to remove clips. So I literally just right along the edge to avoid getting sewn, but I still managed to do it, trust me. This will keep it together. Your stapler is a game changer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on the other side. My clips are probably about 1/4 of an inch apart. You could do bigger ones or smaller ones. It doesn't matter. Just try not to clip too far into your gusset because you want to be able to. So we've got our little flappies and we're just going to line those up. Oh, that one actually was beautiful. And we're going to staple those in place. I'm just using regular swing line stapler from Walmart. And now the top of our bag has a bit better curve, and this is going to be so much nicer. But again, I clip into my gusset so that it lays flatter, and it creates a nice, even distribution around the corner of my bag. So, have my little flappies. And we're just gonna line that up. See how nice and beautiful that just kind of lays on there? That's what we want. I'll do some clips on the straighter edges. And then I will go ahead and take my stapler and staple. I will just staple right around the corner. And repeat the process for the other side. Now that we have our, ooh, she's gonna be cute. So now that we have our gusset around the outside of our bag, I just wanna make sure that I've got some extra clips, because you definitely don't want this shifting on you while you're sewing. You can most definitely staple your entire gusset on, but I have to tell you, without a staple remover, and I have to pull them out with little hemostats, it does take forever. And so the less staples, the better, but it still works. I'm going to go ahead and sew this part at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Essentially like a larger basting stitch. I am going to use a 4.5 stitch length, but I'm essentially just, I don't want to create my full seam allowance on this just yet, because I want to do that with the binding that we're going to add. So I start at the bottom, line up my sewing, and I just work my way around the bag with the gusset. When I get to the corners, I kind of just move the fabric out of the way, try not to create any puckers, but go nice and slow. Keep your corner nice. The bottom corners are tighter, so it's a little bit more work, versus the top, it's more of a gradual curve, so it's not as hard. So come around the top. Sometimes I find if I open the zipper a little bit, it's a little bit more manageable. So we'll go ahead and open the zipper. And again, I'm just kind of working my way around the corners, nice and slow, moving my gusset out of the way, making it flat, trying not to hit the staples that I put in it. Stitching at the end. Oh, and I think I just heard my bobbin spin, so I probably should change that out. So there you have your gusset sewn on to your bag. And that is what we're looking at so far. You're going to go ahead and repeat the same steps for the other side. You will have to squish your bag down a little bit just because you have the other side attached. And then don't forget to remove, if you used a stapler, don't forget to remove your staples after you have attached your main panels to your gusset. One thing I forgot to mention in talking about what we needed cut out for our pattern was the binding. So for this bag, I'm using waterproof canvas for my binding as well as my lining. You can use bias tape, you can use fold over elastic, you can use fabric that you've turned into bias tape. I just find this is easier because you can have the raw edge inside of it without it fraying and it's barely noticed. You will need at least 40 inches long. So 40 inches long. I cut mine for this one. I did 2 inches. You could probably do 1.75 or 2 inches, totally your option. But you're going to need at least 40 inches in length and you're going to need 2 of those, one for both sides. All right, so if we've attached both our sides to our bags, this is what it should look like. You should all be attached all the way around your bag. So now you have all these raw edges. If for any reason you have any large pieces that are sticking off, you kind of want to trim them up a little bit so they're all the same size. I'm going to go ahead and trim my corners just a little. Okay, take a breath, have a drink of some water, or, you know, whatever you prefer. If you need a shot for encouragement, one only. You don't want to get too carried away. So, the way I do my lining, I'm going to try to lighten it up here so I can do this. The way I do my binding is very similar to the way Shannon from Knotted Threads does the binding on the Rosy Sling. I have always done my binding this way, and I'm kind of shocked that it was new for a lot of people. I cannot tell you the first time that I ever saw this done because it was like a million years ago. But because I'm using waterproof canvas, this is the method I'm going to use. If you were using a single fold over binding, you are more than happy to do that. Obviously, it doesn't need to be as wide as mine, but you would literally just fold it over your edge and go all the way around. Same with fold over elastic. But this is the way I do my binding with my waterproof canvas, and I will always do it this way. The only difference between the way Shannon and I do it is I almost do it blind when attaching it the first way around. So by blind, I mean I can't see this strip while I'm tacking it down. Because what I do is I attach this piece against my main panel. So what I'm going to do is with the right side of the fabric, I'm going to start here and, sorry, I'm doing this backwards. Start here, and I'm literally going to go all the way around my bag. To attach it. And like the corners with the gusset, I'm going to go ahead and snip into my waterproof canvas about less than 1/4 of an inch, but a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ease it around the corner as best I can. You will have a little bit of, you know, some of this going on here, but that's because you want to get it around this corner so that you have this extra fabric to fold over. So around the corner, you can put as many clips or whatever you want. Okay. I'm just going to do a few snips on this corner because it's not as bad. Just to kind of ease it, because you want this to be super flat with your pattern. That's how you're going to get a nice, neat corner. So you can see I've got like this little wavy stuff going on. It's fine. It'll work itself out once we get done. So I'm just working my way around. Got to my other corner. A few snips. As close to matching thread as possible to your binding is going to be your best friend. There is no perfect way to do this. But if I've got black thread on this pink waterproof canvas, you're going to see every lump and bump and any slight imperfection there might be, and it's going to drive you absolutely insane. So I try to pick a waterproof canvas that I've got a matching thread for, or close to it as possible. I'm using white thread on this light colored waterproof canvas. I've for sure done all my top stitching and bag put together with a different color and then swapped out my thread for my lining just so that I could avoid so you can just kind of put it all around. Now if you have a cylinder arm, this is going to be a walk in the park because you can do it and see everything you're doing. So I have some extra. I cut mine longer than 40 inches, but you're going to want at least 40 inches. So now that I've come back around to my side, I go past it a little bit to give it some overlap, and I'll just cut the extra off. So we have our entire bag ready for the line or for the binding. Now here's where it gets tricky because I do it backwards and I'm going to do this blind. I'm going to flip this over so that binding that I just put on there is on the bottom. I can't see it while I'm sewing, which isn't awful. It's the corners you're going to have to pay attention to, because if you don't look under as you're coming around the corner, you are more likely to sew this piece onto here or onto the side. I make sure that when I'm going around the corners, I stop for a minute, I lift my corner up a little bit and I push it down as best I can. You might end up with a little pleat or a little pucker. It is totally fine. It will fix itself and it will look great when you're done. You will be so happy. I'm going to go ahead and do this at 3/8 of an inch. Just because, yeah. So you're going to start at the bottom, push your bag out of the way, push your bag out of the way, and we're going to attach this binding to our bag. And we're just going to kind of go around. Right when I hit here is kind of where I lift it up. And I just kind of tuck that down on itself. And I just slowly work my way around the corner. This is a lot easier if you left any kind of bulky interfacing out of your seam allowance. Okay, so we should be in the clear. I'm just going to go around. Again, it might be easier to open the zipper so you can push your bag out of the way a little bit. And then just slowly go around. Making sure to kind of get that gusset nice and flat. Okay, we're coming back around to our last corner, and mine was pushed up. So if I had gone over this, I would have sewn straight into my seam. So I want to make sure that I'm pushing it down, kind of into itself. If you would like to see it done the opposite way, Shannon does have a tutorial on the Rosie sling, and she shows you how she does it with her binding, but it's the same process. We're putting it on in 2 directions. So I'm back around to my side. Okay, snip my extra threads, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna check this. And it looks pretty good. I did pucker it a little bit right there, but I am gonna push it through, and it'll be fine. Trust the process. Okay, so here's what we have. We have it all attached. Now this, I don't feel like it doesn't hurt my hands as bad as birthing a bag sometimes, but this definitely, if you've got sore hands, take your time. So what we're going to do is we're literally going to take this, we're going to push it over and tight as possible. And we're going to flip it around the back, just like so. And we're going to take clips and we're going to hold those down. Oops, sorry. Right? So that's what we're doing. Okay. The corners are going to be the toughest because you want to push them as far as you can into itself. Okay. See, it's not that bad. But then you want to pinch this and kind of roll it. So you're creating this sandwich, if you will. So I have to use my bigger clips on those spots because my little ones like to break every once in a while. So we are just going around the entire bag and pushing to the stitch line that we made, and we're going to pinch. This is literally the edge of that bag, and we're putting it nice and tight and snug on there. And we're going to go all the way around the bag. And this is what's going to give, so if you need to like close your zippers too, that helps a little bit at this point so that your bag kind of stays solid. But again, you're going to push. Corners are going to be a little tight, and you're going to roll it. And it's going to create this most amazing, amazing interior. And what's nice about this is it gives the outside a nice, good shape. So, okay, again with the corner, shoving it all the way in, and I'm just rolling it. If you feel like you didn't, if you start to feel like a really thin spot in your binding, it means you didn't push it far enough onto the edge of our panels. So you want to make sure that you feel that panel right there. And the reason why I like to do 2 inches to 1.25 inches when it comes to my binding, I know a lot of people say you could do 1 inch, but with this method, we're obviously losing the amount that we're using for our seam allowance. In my case, it was 3/8. Plus, you're folding that over and over again. So I like to have the extra binding, but at the same time, if you have bulky areas, you're obviously going to need more width to go around them. Now there's also other new tools when it comes to binding out too. I know that some people carry a self-adhesive binding that literally you just untape, add to it, stitch over. But then again, it's adhesive, so you run the risk of gumming up your needles and stuff, so it's totally your choice. So here is where we're at. We have this entire thing flipped around. Now what we're going to do, and if you have a cylinder arm, again, this would be super easy. I'm going to sew my bag standing up. I have found that this works the best for the way I do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my edge of my, just as close to the edge as possible. I want to be on the binding, not on the panel, but about 1/8 of an inch or even less, if you can manage it, on that binding. And what I do, squish the bag, line it up, and then just nice and slow. Now obviously you're going through a few different layers, so take your time. Yeah, see, because something is already... Nope. Oh, check to make sure you have a bobbin in properly. Before you start this, make sure your bobbin's in the right way. Oh, you know what? This is the wrong thread. That's why. Okay. Technical difficulties here. Let's see. Do I have enough on this one? I should. It helps if you have the proper materials, guys. I even changed the I even changed the bobbin right before I started the binding, knowing that I was going to run out. So, take 2. I'm going to pop these stitches out really quick just because I had the wrong bobbin in there. I have found that my machine does not like the larger text thread with a smaller text thread in the bobbin. Technical difficulties. So before you start your binding process, you check your bobbin, because you want to make sure that you have a good amount. When I swapped mine out, I probably had enough to maybe based on my binding, but there wasn't a lot. So rather than go through halfway and be like, oh, I'm out of bobbin, check your bobbin before you start binding. All right. This was way more difficult than I thought it was going to be. All right, try again. Maybe. Okay, take 2. Okay, pushing it down, making sure my threads are in the right direction. That's better. Okay. So now we're just going to go nice and slow. And I'm going to literally walk my bag standing upright around my foot. The corner will be your trickiest part, but if you go slow and just walk your bag. I like to put my hand in there. Make sure my zipper is out of the way of my foot here. we've made it back around. Trim off our threads. Okay. And you will notice you have extra binding. What I like to do is I like to make sure that everything looks good, right? And then I will take my scissors and just trim this just a little bit, not a super ton, because you might see your stitches in some spots if you move the binding out of the way, which is fine. You will not see them in your bag, I promise you. Unless you like were way off on your binding, this will work. Okay, so, and then like right at this part right here, I like to taper this down just so that it sits underneath where it's supposed to. But guys, oh, it's a binded bag and it's beautiful. So you've done one side. Pat yourself on the back. Have another shot if you need to, but not really. And then we're going to do the other side. And she will be bound. Okay, if you're still with me, you have successfully bound your bag on both sides. Seriously, guys, the hard part is over. Now we're going to turn our bag. I mean, this could also be a hard part too, but it's really not. We're going to turn our bag right side out. I think I like the Decaville. I guess we're going to see. Sometimes you just got to give it a nice shove. Just like that. Push these corners out. Ooh, they looking nice. Ooh. Don't punch yourself in the face like I just almost did. Just gonna push those corners out. Guys, seriously, you bound a bag. And what I like about this is those raw edges are tucked against our gusset, so you do not see them very much inside of your bag because you're looking at it with it, hold on, pushed against the gusset. So there's our raw edge way up there, but it gets hidden by this binding. Like, look how amazing this is, guys. So all that's left to do is our strap, and that's it. So the Decaville kind of made some wrinkles. I still think I like the fleece. I think if I'm going to do it again, it'll be with fleece. But guys, look how amazing. Amazing, amazing. Okay, let's add our strap. Well, definitely not me forgetting to hit record while we make our straps. But guess what? Let's just pretend you watched this amazingness happen. Make your straps any way you want to. You could go with Jenny's design in her pattern, which create 2 super cute handles. Or you could make longer ones like I did. And I did 27 inches long. I find that gives a good little shoulder length strap. Or you could make whatever handle you want. Like if you like rolled handles and think that you would enjoy that, go ahead and I'm adding my strap ends. And I just lost power. Okay, now that we have power restored, let's try this again. So I'm adding my person or my strap ends. It's funny because where we live, I live on an island in the Pacific Northwest, and we don't get hurricanes, we don't get blizzards, we don't get tornadoes. Actually, we had tornadoes one time on the mainland, but anyway, I digress. What we do have a constant amount of are windstorms, and we actually had one issue that was pretty decent. We didn't lose power, which was kind of nice. However, today, mysteriously, we lost power, and there's like no wind. And then we found out that the entire island was pretty much without power, which means that somewhere on one of the ends of the island, somebody hit something and it caused the power outage. So 40 minutes later, we are back with power. Hallelujah. There is nothing worse than being without power at our house because we also have no cell service here. I live so far in the sticks that we rely heavily on our Wi-Fi. So yeah. Anyway, I have installed, oh, I missed a screw. I've installed my strap ends. Again, these are 27 inches long. And if you're making a double folded vinyl strap, it's obviously 3 inches wide, so that when you fold it in half and then half again, you have your 3/4 inch straps. So straps are done. Strap ends are done. Now I'm going to take my nifty little strap tool. I'm going to mark my holes. And now we are going to, I use my leather punch tool to just do these so I don't have to swap out my punch on my press. If you don't have a rivet press or you're not doing rivets, you could easily sew these on. But because I have rivets and a rivet press, I'm gonna do rivets. Okay, there's 2, there's 4. 1, 2. Now, again, this is personal preference, but when I do bags like this and I use strap ends, I really like to make it so you see the strap end while you're holding the bag. So what I end up doing is I take the wrong side of my strap and I feed it through, or the wrong side of my strap end, I apologize. And I feed it through so that it's going in with the wrong side out. And then that way, when I fold these up, I get a nice little, you see the strap end. Because if you're going to use the hardware, you might as well see it, right? Okay, so that's taken care of. Now I'm going to take my press and I'm just going to rivet these on. And there we have it. We have a finished How You Doin Bowler by Sincerely Jen patterns. Now's a good time to go around your bag and double check that there's no random strings hanging off. You can singe them or snip them. But I absolutely love how this one turned out. Like, it's amazing. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope this tutorial helps you.